Muse, the rhythm game for horny Taiko players. No? Not a good start? Alright, I'll try again. Muse, the vibrant, artistically driven anime rhythm game that uses a barrage of color-coded objects and creatures for you to hit to a plethora of upbeat electronic tracks. It's a very straightforward game with some neat little nuances that they insert, and has some other aspects of this game that could be very in your face at times. Very in your face. The gameplay is extremely similar to Taiko, but has some subtle differences within gameplay, and has a much stronger focus on artistic expression than a good majority of games in its genre. The hammers that come out of the sky you have to react to, the ghost notes, the spikes, and these mini bosses that hurl objects at you all add a bit of personality to the levels and are neat little additions to make the game a bit more engaging. It also does a pretty good job at easing you into it with its calmer levels, but if you are already an experienced Taiko player or just decently acclimated to rhythm games in general, you might find yourself getting a little impatient with the amount of low-level content there is until you've unlocked levels that are a bit more stimulating to play, as every level needs to be unlocked in order to progress through the likes of simply playing the game or unlocking some achievements. Personally, I didn't really find myself engaged with the game until I started unlocking level 8s and 9s. And you have to unlock these difficulties every single time too, which is the Master difficulty. Unlocking levels is one thing, but unlocking the Master difficulty every single time on top of that was just extremely tedious over time, since I'd be playing the same song twice in a row. And if I didn't end up enjoying the Master difficulty, it was really just a punch to the gut at that point. With 46 main game songs, some other free songs here and there, and no outlet for custom levels through Steam Workshop, you will find yourself exhausting your options once you become experienced with this game, which for most people, I'd imagine would be just shy of a few hours. You can pay for DLC, but it's 10 times the price of the original game, and while it's updated every month, I'd argue you're still paying a pretty hefty amount compared to what most games can offer you. Now, would this game be much more enjoyable with the access of this content? Yeah, probably. But $30 is too much of an investment in my opinion, especially if some of the content doesn't end up being around your preferred skill range. I'm a little annoyed you can't just buy individual packs either, so you're basically trapped into this all or nothing philosophy that the game seems to be putting on you if you want to enjoy content outside of the main game. I don't have a whole lot to say about the levels themselves. They seem to go to the music just fine, and I didn't pick up on any glaring errors that made me think it wasn't doing so. I guess the best way to summarize a lot of the in-game content is safe, but that's not to say the more difficult levels in the game don't do its job at providing unique challenges by utilizing everything in its repository, but there's just not enough of that to make up for its scarce selection overall. No rate mods are apparent either, but given how reactionary some of the levels can be, I think it would be virtually impossible to play some of these sped up without having them down by heart. Lastly, the music is pretty much what I expected out of a game like this. Almost all of it is anime themed or extremely upbeat, 2 to 3 minutes. It's pretty predictable and gets a bit old after you're a few hours deep. The offset wizard also proceeded to tell me that I was using a monitor with a lot of latency, and given I'm using a 144Hz monitor, I highly doubt that's the case. Maybe it's because I'm using windowed mode, but I'd be surprised if it caused latency that severe, as I have not faced this issue to this extent with the game before. The fever meter, on the other hand, caught me off guard the most in this game, but in a good way. It functions very similar to Star Power in Guitar Hero, as you can toggle when you want to use said fever in the keybind options. This creates a very unique and technical way to score in this game, and kind of brings back the days when pathing was very prominent in Guitar Hero, so I'd really admire Muse for implementing something like this for a change, even if I'm not someone who goes crazy for it on a personal level. While the scoring in this game can be quite technical through this very addition alone, and generate some pretty cool competition on the leaderboards, the addition of characters and elephants make me think this game would be better off without leaderboards. So when you unlock characters, they each have their own attributes along with the elephants too. Some of these straight up influence your score by a pretty heavy margin, and I'm assuming that a specific combination allows you to get on the leaderboard depending on the song. Because after I FC'd something with all perfects, I noticed I wasn't even close to the #1 score. And not because I didn't use optimal fever, but because I wasn't using the right score multipliers. There's no objectives or even hints on how to unlock any of these either. From what I found, it's not necessarily random, but you apparently have to get all the way up to level 130 to officially have everything unlocked. And I found that to be very inconvenient, especially since some of the better ones aren't unlocked until you've played the game for a little while. What's the point of having leaderboards if you can't even compete on them until you have the relevant characters and elephants unlocked? Are they just trying to make sure you're experienced enough with the game before you can unlock certain things? If so, I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think it's very practical and should not be applied to an entire player base. Regardless, these are not attributes you put into a game with the leaderboard system, as it adds a lot of unnecessary clutter in my opinion, and come off as something you would see in a game solely meant for casual play without leaderboards. It just sounds like a pain trying to figure out which character and elfin combinations work, rather than practicing the actual song itself and using your own skill as a measurement instead, and doing some technical fever pathing. I know it sounds like I'm making a big deal out of this, but if this game didn't have leaderboards, I wouldn't have minded any of this, and I would have passed the characters and elfins off as just fun little additions to spice the gameplay up for the player, but these should not have any significant impact on how well a person should score if the game has leaderboards in my opinion. At the very least, at least show what character and elfin was used to obtain said score on the leaderboards, with some little icons to decide or something. I think that would at the very least mitigate some of the unnecessary experimenting needed to figure out what works. Now, I might lose some people here, but I'm not exactly head over heels for the lewd approach this game randomly takes at times. I think the art is super vibrant and pretty to look at, but the lewd approach this game takes can be kinda off-putting. I don't mind it here and there, but it just feels overwhelming when it doesn't need to be. I don't know, it just feels a bit contradicting to have these adorable tiny characters hitting all these notes during gameplay, and then you get to the results screen and you're like, holy shit. There's also some common anime jokes or lewd jokes during the transition screens, one of them being about how old the girls in the game are. It's kind of funny at times I guess, but overall leaves a conflicting taste in my mouth, and confuses me on where this game's identity lies thematically, on top of its confusing scoring design. I think I gave this game a fair shot by unlocking all of the main levels, and playing through a good majority of them on hard and master mode. But I found myself dozing off trying to unlock everything, and there's just a bunch of unnecessary grinding in this game in general that had me frankly bored at times. The levels were okay in full, but I only found myself coming back to a handful of them. Artistically, it's very pretty, it's got some neat concepts here and there, thematically, it's a bit confusing, and I feel like its identity is very conflicting on what type of game it wants to be too. I really am certain in the end that this game is meant for casual rhythm game players that are big into anime with a slightly lewd touch to it, so if that's your thing, you might enjoy this. But even as a casual game, I felt like its charm wore off for me, personally, a lot quicker than I think its developers were intending it to last. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting the channel, and if you'd like to support the channel for more rhythm gaming content like this, feel free to check out my Patreon, drop a sub if you're new here, and check out my other links below. I'll see you all in whatever video I upload next, and take care.